looked at the birds in horror. One of them was a dove, even if it was pink. But the others... He scowled across at Jerry, who was giggling helplessly, rolling about on the book. "Oh, nearly right, Tom," spluttered Jerry through tears of laughter. He was delighted. Interrupting spells did make them go wrong. Tom glowered at Jerry, who was wiping away tears of laughter.
"Rotten show, if you ask me,"
observed the parrot from the bookcase.
"Cheap."
agreed the pink dove.
"Toot-toot,"
hooted the owl. "For my next trick," said Tom, ignoring them, "I need an assistant." He grabbed Jerry and stood him in the middle of the floor. From where Jerry stood, he could see the open spellbook. It said, "Slow somebody down. How to turn someone into a tortoise for 3 minutes." Tom stood over Jerry menacingly and waved his wand. He started to say the spell, "Ruckle, muckle, corn." But Jerry knew just what to do now. "That isn't right," interrupted the mouse. "It should be truckle." "I know what I'm doing," spat Tom.
"No, you don't,"
commented the parrot. "Cheep," the pink dove joined in.
"Toot-toot,"
finished the owl. "Who's running this show anyway?" Tom bellowed at them. "Now," he went on, "as I was saying..." He cleared his throat and continued. "Ruckle, truckle, bunion, diddly, quat." And Tom waved his wand at Jerry and waited. Well, Jerry sort of turned into a tortoise. But then, Tom had only sort of said the spell. On Jerry's back appeared a hard, shiny tortoise shell, but he kept his own head and his own arms and legs, and his own tail. Tom waited for a moment for the spell to finish working. It didn't. That seemed to be as far as it was going to go. Tom tried to chase Jerry anyway, but Jerry could scuttle away just as fast as ever. The spell hadn't slowed him up at all. They hurtled 3 times round the table. Then Tom jumped onto it and made a dive for Jerry's head. But the mouse tortoise just pulled his head into his shell, the way tortoises can. Tom hit Jerry's shell head on.
"Yow!"
He shrieked as he collapsed, seeing stars. While Tom was on the floor, Jerry scuttled out from under his nose. He dashed over to the spellbook. "Oh, you couldn't slow me up, Tom," he laughed. And before Tom could move, he put one hand on the wand. "Zickly, zockly, wee," said Jerry. "For 3 minutes, you'll be a tree." Jerry's spell was much more successful than Tom's had been. It was a very cat-shaped tree, crouched as though about to pounce, but it had some leaves growing out of it. The pink dove flew over to roost on Tom's head. The owl hooted.
"It's an improvement,"
commented the parrot. Jerry knew that he only had 3 minutes before the spell would wear off. In the meantime, he had turned himself back into a proper mouse. Quickly, he flipped through the pages of the spellbook until he found the one he wanted. He touched the wand. "Humphy, Pumphy, Shrikey Towers," announced Jerry. "I give you a rain cloud for 2 hours. When Tom turned back into a cat, he was soaking wet. "It's raining in the sitting room," he thought. He couldn't understand why. Then he looked up and saw a little gray cloud floating directly over his head. Tom stepped forward. So did the cloud. Tom walked several paces. The cloud went with him. Tom ran round the room. And the cloud kept up with him. "I'm stuck with it," muttered Tom bitterly. He went and sat by the spellbook to see if there was any way to lift the spell. There didn't seem to be, but it was hard to tell. It was raining so hard on the book that the ink had run and the pages were all soggy. Tom looked at the mess all around him. "I'd better go outside before I turn the sitting room into a bog," he thought. First, he grabbed an umbrella. Then he grabbed the hat, wand, and spellbook and threw them into the dustbin outside.
Huh. Magic,
said Tom as he sat down in the backyard. He put up the umbrella. At least it would keep his head dry. Jerry knew that Tom wouldn't come into the kitchen to chase him. The cloud was raining too hard. So he got up onto the kitchen table and finished off the icing. Later, he would start on the cake. But for the moment, he climbed onto the windowsill to look at Tom. Tom sat underneath his umbrella with his head in his hands, scowling. A small pond had formed around his feet. "Cheer up, Tom," called Jerry gleefully through the open window. "It only goes on for 2 hours, just enough time for me to make a start on that cake." And Jerry dashed back to the kitchen table. Tom wished he was still sitting on the armchair feeling bored. He wished he had never ordered the magic conjuring book. But most of all, he wished it would stop raining.